Good evening and welcome to another virtual Virtuoso with the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. I'm William Intriligator, music director and conductor, and joining us today is our principal bass, Colton Kelley. Welcome, Colton.
Hi, William. Good to see you.
Great to see you. It's great that you're doing this. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a really great story about your background vis-a-vis the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. So maybe we could just start with that.
Yeah, totally. So I actually grew up in Cheyenne. I went to high school at Cheyenne Central High School. My first audition was actually for the Cheyenne Symphony. I think I was in my senior year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, those auditions are blind. So even though I was there, I didn't get to actually know it was you auditioning.
Right.
But I remember that when I would go visit the Central High School Orchestra, and at that time it was with Ms. Lazarus.
Right.
And that I remember there were questions. I think you asked a question once to me, how old do you have to be to audition to be in the Cheyenne Symphony? And I remember that. I think that was you.
Yeah. That sounds like something I would say.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead. So then you grew up in Cheyenne, you went to Central High, you auditioned, your very first orchestra audition was the Cheyenne Symphony.
Yeah. It wasn't my best audition. It took me a couple more auditions to get my groove, I guess. And kind of learn the audition skill in itself, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah. And then my first orchestra teacher, like you said, was Michelle Lazarus, she works at the symphony now. Yeah. So that's like a really cool thing for me to like get to reconnect with her and like kind of have that come full circle, you know?
Oh, I know. It's so great. So after high school, where did you go to do your studying? Because you're an amazing player, Colton. Tell us.
Yeah. I took some time off of school right after high school. I didn't go back to college right away. And before I even did, I started studying with Nick Rakuber down here in Denver. He's the assistant principal for the Colorado Symphony. I'm studying with him currently still. Yeah.
So you call Denver your home now?
For now, yeah.
And you also play with a lot of other organizations now too, right?
Right, yeah. Previously, I was playing principal for the Denver Philharmonic, but I sub with most of the symphonies in the area. Just doing freelance stuff is kind of my main gig, you know?
Yeah. And then you saw the job announcement for principal bass of Cheyenne Symphony.
Yeah.
And that was just like 2 years ago or so, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And was that the second time you auditioned for us, or was that
maybe? No, I probably have auditioned 3 or 4 times. So
wow,
took me quite a few tries, but yeah.
It's just such a wonderful story that you came in and blew us away, and then we got to meet you after we announced, it was decided, because for those of you who don't realize that we do the auditions blind. So we don't know who's playing. They're behind a screen or a partition or something. And so then we find out, oh my gosh, you've actually auditioned for us before. You grew up here. You went to Central High, and now you're principal bass.
I know. Yeah.
So great. We hope that you'll stay with us in that position for a very long time.
Yeah. I hopefully. I hope so as well.
And we've been having a lot of fun already. I mean, I know that with the coronavirus, obviously our season got cut short, and next season's plans are kind of being adjusted and changing up the repertoire a little bit because of it, to accommodate some social distancing and things like that. But I feel like we've had some really great times together. I've been like so happy with the bass section under your leadership. Don Juan immediately comes to mind when we did the Strauss tone poem Don Juan. I thought that you were great with that.
That was kind of a big piece to come in. Like that was my first concert as principal. So that was a big, like, that jumping in on the deep end sort of deal. But the bass section, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better group of guys. They're all great, you know. So I can only take so much credit, which is very little.
What a great leader. Good for you. Well, tell us a little bit about the musical selections that you've picked for us. I understand, like a lot of your fellow musicians in the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra, you're going to start off with some Bach, which I am so excited about. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm starting off with the Prelude from Bach's Second Cello Suite. I've worked on this a little bit in the past, but it's, as far as studying it in depth, it's somewhat new. But I mean, it's one of my, it's probably my favorite Bach cello suite. It's just such a personal and intimate suite, and it really contrasts the first, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess to me, it's a little melancholy, but more like inward and reflective, I guess, if that makes sense, you know, and more just more serious, I guess, contemplative.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love playing Bach, and I think just as a musician in general, it's really important to study that music, and that there's so much to like delve into musically with it. Technically, it's pretty challenging, especially playing it on a different instrument than it was written for, but
exactly.
But it's it works out pretty well on bass, actually. But there's a lot of musical ideas and shapes and things to explore. There's lots of I've been listening to it a ton, and there's just so many different ways to interpret it. But that's kind of like the fun of it, is kind of listening to all those different interpretations, like working through it, analyzing it, and kind of like hashing it out for myself, you know, and finding my own little groove in it.
I totally know what you mean. Like, I try to play Bach every day at the piano, and sometimes I'll go back to the same piece time and again, but it's different ornamentation, different phrasing, different, just bringing out this voice or that voice.
Yeah.
There's so much to his music, even though it may sound very simple. It's just, the possibilities are limitless with that.
Yeah, totally.
And meaning behind the music too.
Yeah.
We've heard the Bach cello suites over the course of these virtuosos this summer and late spring. We've heard them on cello, viola, French horn, now double bass. Do you think that, I mean, it's hard to know. I wonder if Bach would have realized when he wrote these for cello, whether other instruments would have, you know, taken them so well to heart, you know?
Yeah.
It's normal for bass players, and maybe I'm just mentioning this for the people out there who may not realize this, but it's normal that, you know, bass players, symphonic bass players, they will play all the suites, right? I mean, are all six fair game on bass? Is there anyone that you guys don't do, or?
Not that I know of. I know 6 is a little bit tricky, just because it was what is it, scored for a 5-string violin or cello, and maybe different tuning.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Yeah,
but they're all commonly played, and
yeah. So now, because the cello has different strings and different tunings than on those open strings than a bass, that must be especially challenging when you're doing the chords in these. And do you have the low C extension on the string bass that would help emulate sort of that low C string of a cello, an octave lower than cello? Do you have the C?
Yeah, I do. However, for this particular suite, I tend to lock that C as a D string.
Yeah.
So I have a low D. So that gives me a few more options with chords. Gives me an extra octave of register if I want. And as far as the chords go, I'm taking a fair amount of liberties in how I voice the chord to make it comfortable, but also because the bass, like how you said, it has different tuning intervals. So I try to use chord voicings that resonate more. like depending on the circumstance, if it's necessary. But with this type of stuff with Bach, I like to try and get as much resonance as possible.
I like that. Yeah. Well, that's the sign of a great bass player is you can really make your instrument sing. I mean, you did that at your audition, and you do that when you perform with us in the symphony. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share before we get into the Bach?
I don't think so.
Great. Well, here's the prelude from Bach's Second Cello Suite, performed by Colton Kelley, our principal bass on string bass. Enjoy. Bravo, Colton.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, there's something about Bach's music. It's always so soothing, I think, and it sort of calms the spirit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, tell us about the next selection that you've chosen. You were telling me before we were recording that there's a kind of a funny story about how you found the actual sheet music. Tell us a little bit about that and the composer and the piece?
Yeah, so this is David Ellis's Sonata for Unaccompanied Bass. It's a really, I think it's a great addition to just the solo bass repertoire. You know, there's not a lot of music written for solo bass, you know, or very much serious music. And as far as David Ellis as a composer, you know, I couldn't find a whole lot about him. He's a British composer born in the 30s. He wrote this in like 73 for the Isle of Man International Bass Competition. And
that's cool. Is that like an established, well-known bass competition for string bass players?
It must be.
That would be
I should know, but I yes, I am. It is. But yeah, yeah, it's great though. It's somewhat atonal, but it's not like unlistenable. Every time I play through it, there's different things that kind of jump out, different like just elements that there's a lot of depth to it that I find. It uses a fair amount of extended techniques that aren't too virtuosic, but definitely add color and a nice bit of texture that you don't see in a lot of bass music, and that maybe you wouldn't necessarily expect in a solo bass piece.
Yeah, like can you give us an example of one of those extended?
Yeah, just like ricochet type of bowing techniques, different left hand, right hand pizzicatos, and
cool. Different
types of bow strokes. That's one of the elements I've tried to incorporate as like a personal approach to this. To me, some of the passages that it stands out that there should be a different characteristic as far as the types of bow strokes, if that makes sense, you know?
Sure, yeah. Well, it sounds like he wrote with a great knowledge of the bass and what it could do. Do you think that maybe he also played the bass? I wonder.
I'm not sure. He might have, or he might have at least been like, I'm sure he was in good like contact with bassists. Yeah. Because I mean, it's very well written for the bass. It's challenging and it has its challenging like aspects, but nothing like illogical. Nothing like it like playing the Bach, where you can definitely tell it was written for a different instrument.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's a cool contrast then, to show this is really idiomatic bass writing. Yeah. You know, I was surprised and a little sad that there wasn't a Wikipedia entrance for David Ellis. There were other David Ellises, but not the British composer.
Right.
But, you know, I was trying to do some research too, and I was surprised that there's not more out there on him. It looks like you said he was born in the 30s, and what I've seen doesn't have him like an actual death date. So he might still be alive and just an elderly British gentleman.
Yeah. Still time for another bass sonata.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You had mentioned an extended technique called ricochet, and for our non-string players who are watching, I thought maybe you could explain what that is, just a little bit of a explanation.
Yeah, just I guess basically just a series of rapid notes all in succession in one bow.
You kind of let the bow itself bounce on the string.
Yeah, because the bow will bounce by itself, so it's like just a fast bouncy bow stroke, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we sometimes call it jeté as well.
Yeah.
Almost synonymous, basically.
Right.
Pretty much, yeah, in string playing. Fantastic. Now tell us about how you actually found the sheet music of this piece.
Yeah, so I actually hadn't heard about David Ellis myself. I happened upon this score, or this piece. I was in a string shop in Munich, and they just had like a section for solo bass music, and I was mostly looking for like bass like arrangements for Bach, and like tuned to make it easier for Bach, and I happened upon the David Ellis piece, and I figured I might as well grab this while I'm at it, and then started like looking through it and actually playing it, and it was like, man, this is a great piece that I just found by chance. So like I was really struck gold on that one.
I love that when you just sort of find the sheet music, you play through it. There's something really refreshing about that you didn't actually hear a performance or recording of it first, and then you actually kind of discovered it and found it in a little music shop in Munich, Germany. I know,
right?
Were you in Munich for a musical reason, like some kind of competition or orchestra or audition?
Yeah, I was there for a little over a week. I was playing with the Bavarian Phil at the time.
Wow.
I did a little musician exchange program with the Denver Philharmonic my past orchestra, and yeah, I was there a little over a week. It was awesome time. I love Munich. I love Germany now. Kind of wasn't on my radar before that, but now it's like one of my favorite places.
For those of us who love orchestral music, it's always going to be like
Oh yeah.
practically. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I spent a year mostly in Germany after college, studying music and going to just all the different cities and all the different philharmonics and everything.
Oh
And
yeah.
just,
There's no end to the amount of like just outstanding live music you can go see.
So true. In fact, I have a great memory of being in Munich and
Yeah.
going to a music shop that's not too far from that central Platz with the glockenspiel clock thing.
Right.
I mean, I'm remembering back to 1992 to date me. So you probably weren't even born yet, but I still remember that music shop. I got a really great wooden baton in that shop. And I wonder if it's the same shop where you got it.
It's gotta be, because that's where the place I went was like right off of the main Marienplatz.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was like right off the main
But yeah,
plaza.
definitely
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, here's David Ellis's Sonata for Unaccompanied Bass. Thank you, Colton.
Mm-hmm.
Bravo, Colton.
Yeah,
And we're recording this interview beforehand, so actually I can't wait to hear this when it's, you know, I guess broadcast, I'll say live. So
right.
I'm saying bravo in advance, but actually I haven't heard it yet and I can't wait to hear it.
Right.
But I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear this piece that you're introducing to probably everybody watching this has never heard the David Ellis. So that is super cool.
Try and do it justice.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I mean, just playing it and bringing it to life and bringing that composer onto our radar. David Ellis is really doing it justice in that, and I'm sure you're gonna play it so musically. So tell us about your final musical selection for tonight. It's a name that is well loved in string bass playing worlds, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm playing the Dragonetti Waltz number 3. Yeah, Dragonetti's definitely very well loved and respected by bassists. He wrote this. He wrote a series of 12 waltzes while he was living in London. So I think they were written kind of towards the end of his life as he was older. And as far as I read, as far as I could tell, he didn't perform these a lot. These were more of kind of like a personal thing. And then one of his friends I think one of his friends after he had already passed away had the 12 waltzes published because he appreciated them so much, appreciated Dragonetti's approach to the instrument and kind of just like as a groundbreaking virtuoso.
Right. So was Dragonetti to the string bass sort of what Paganini was to the violin? He was like a great virtuoso of the instrument, but then he also wrote things for that instrument as a composer. Is that kind of, am I getting it right or not
yes.
quite?
There is also another Paganini of the bass who came along later, but definitely Dragonetti was he was that. I mean, there wasn't, as far as I know, there were other bass virtuosos, but it wasn't like he was definitely the standout guy. And when he moved to London, he was like the king. He was the principal bass for the King's Court.
Oh,
and
wow.
He was very sought after for all of the major London groups at the time. And even I don't know if it was when he was traveling to London, at some point he met Beethoven and kind of opened Beethoven's eyes. He played Beethoven's second cello sonata. I might be getting that wrong. He played one of Beethoven's cello sonatas for him.
On the bass?
Cool. Impressed him enough so that Beethoven was kind of saw the value of like scoring with more important parts in orchestral music for bass, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I had no idea about that connection.
Right.
You mentioned other virtuosos. It made me think of Kusevitsky, who many people will remember him as the longtime music director and conductor of the Boston Symphony, but he was a virtuoso, fantastic bass player in his youth, and he was a composer of a great concerto for bass. Yeah. So tell us about how you approach the Dragonetti. Is there anything special about it, or anything else that we should know about? It's a waltz, you mentioned, so we know that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be true to the Viennese waltz kind of style, is like kind of how, like the style in that it's written. But I'm definitely trying to kind of use it as a canvas to show some more extended technique stuff that kind of like with the David Ellis, but like put it out there more that we don't play on the bass. A lot more ricochet, a lot more spiccato, and like balzato type of bow strokes.
Sure.
Because it's
ask you a little bit more about the ricochet and spiccato and some of those other kind of extended techniques, as you call them. For the string bass, you have such a heavier bow than a violin or viola, even cello. How does that affect that bouncing of the bow? The fact that it's so much heavier, does it make it bounce easier? Is it harder? Does it also depend on your grip? Because I know that there are two main styles of grip for string bass players. There's German and French, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the German grip, the underhand grip, it does tend to bounce more, and then German bows versus French bows, they bounce a little bit differently on the stick, so the bounce point is it's located slightly different.
Like in a different place of the bow, yeah.
I don't know if it's easier or harder versus other instruments' bows. I know the angle is slightly different, at least for cello and bass. because it's
Sure.
not a vertical angle. It's like a, you know, so
Exactly. Since your whole like physical stance with the instrument is not like a violin.
yeah,
It's
we don't quite have the same help with gravity, but I
yeah.
mean, it's still like it's a kind of a balance of finding the right distance in the bow that will bounce consistently before it just starts bouncing. Like if you get too close to the frog, it doesn't bounce enough. If you get too close to the tip, it bounces out of control. So getting
Right.
the right distance and the right like amount of pressure and speed.
And when you change bows, like I don't know when the last time you changed your bow was, did it
Mhm.
take a lot of getting used to? Maybe if there was a different bounce point and everything else?
Yeah, I actually changed. I got a new bow just before I started playing with Cheyenne.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a really big upgrade. The bow I had before was great, but this bow I have now is, I'm loving it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
So
tell us about it. Is it like an American maker or is it German or something like
I'm
that?
not too familiar with the maker himself. It's his first name is V. It might be Vojto or
Mhm.
Vlad, but it's Radoslavovich is his name. He might be located in the States, but he might be like a Ukrainian or Russian
Sure.
guy.
You're
But
loving the bow, huh?
yeah, it's a great bow. I got it from Ganari House, and they're the only ones who sell his bows. So he might be located in the States, and he deals through them. But yeah, it's a great bow. And as far as like bouncing and strokes, like this bow just works so much better because it just makes it a lot. Wouldn't say effortless because you still have to finesse it and get it to like get the right balance and everything. But the bow works for you so much easier, which is the great thing about a good bow is it makes your life a lot easier.
Fantastic. That's so cool. And while we're on the topic of your instrument,
Hmm.
is there anything about your actual bass that you'd like to share with us? So, is it an older instrument, a newer instrument? How long you've been playing on it?
Yeah, I think I've had it for 4 years, maybe three. It was built in 2011, so it's a modern instrument.
Oh,
The maker is Jay Hyde, which is a maker out of California, I think in LA. I purchased it from Robertson and Sons Violins down in Albuquerque, so
oh,
lots
cool.
of great instruments coming out of there.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
Wow. I have another question for you, and it's a little off topic, if you
All
forgive
right.
me. But I don't mean to stereotype, but I know that often bass players will also play electric bass or play in other styles of music, other
Right.
kinds of bass. Is that something that you do at all?
I I don't currently. I have like fair amount in the past. Like I grew up playing electric bass, kind of along with upright. I played a lot of jazz and rock, a little bit of funk and that sort of stuff. But kind of the older I've gotten, the more I've started to just specialize with orchestral and trying to um, study like deeper into solo bass
Yeah,
works.
that's so cool. And before we were recording, you were telling me, and I was really impressed, by the way, that like with how hard it's been with Corona, that not having as many rehearsals and performances and everything like that, you were like more time to practice. And I was like, well, I was thinking to myself, wow, good for you. Because I mean, some other musicians are like, well, I don't have an actual gig to prepare for, so I'm going to let the instrument sit in its case for a few weeks. But you're like, you've just been.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that I would normally like to practice that I don't get to as much just
Yeah.
because it's not pertinent. If I have gigs and concerts, that's the stuff that I need to give more time to. But now I have all the time I want to look
Yeah.
at Bach and look at all the concertos and everything that I don't normally work on.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, anything else to share about the Dragonetti? I'm sorry, I kind of brought the topic of the conversation a little off field, but
That's all right. Yeah. I don't think so. It's a really fun piece. I found out about it. I was just watching some videos on YouTube, and the principal bass for the Vienna, I think is Vienna Philharmonic. I could be wrong. He's like fantastic, one of the best virtuosos right now. and there's just like a video of him playing it on a really fine old Italian bass, and it was like I just fell in love with the piece just because of that video, you know.
That's awesome. Wow. That's so great.
Don't watch that before listening to me, because then he won't do it justice, you know.
No, I'm sure you'll be up there, right up there with them.
Yeah.
Here's Colton Kelley's performance of the Dragonetti Waltz number 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, here we go. So great. Thank you, Colton. Bravo.
Thanks.
Yeah, this has been so fun having a chance to visit with you. And I'm really excited for all of our audiences in Cheyenne to get to know you better through this, because it's really fun to be able to call you one of our own, a Cheyenne, success story for the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra, how you grew up there and now you're our principal bass. It's wonderful for us. And you're so talented. You bring so much to the orchestra. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Any other plans coming up this summer or anything else for you?
I'm excited to get back into rehearsing and playing with the symphony. You know, that's kind of the big thing I'm looking forward to. So.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we may have approval for our August concert. That's a sort of leftover from last season.
Right.
So we're excited about that one.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah. So I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think that we should be able to perform in early August, which is going to be great. It's just
that'll be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Good to see you. Thank you again, Colton, and bravo. You are a virtuoso. It's been great getting to know you better and to hear you perform solo.
Thanks, William.
Yeah. To all of you watching out there, thank you so much for tuning in each week. And we hope that you'll join us again next week for another virtual virtuoso. And until then, enjoy and try to find some music in your life. Bye-bye.